Hello, everybody. Come on in, get settled, introduce yourselves in the chat if you'd like to do so, and we'll get started in just a minute. All right, get us started there. Mark's ready to learn. That's great. Good to hear. All right, so we're about a minute or so after. We'll go slow in the beginning here, give people a chance to go ahead and join us. But today we're going to be talking about learning and analytics, right, and how those two fit together. So we are joined by our good friends from Cloud Generation. They've got a really interesting product that's going to help you keep your learners engaged, drive completion rates, and really look to personalize that experience that your learners have with the association. And of course, that fits really well with our overall goal to drive engagement and to segment our audiences and drive that personalization as well. Okay, so let's do some quick introductions. I am Bill Conforti, Senior Vice President of Strategy and Solutions with A2. Some of you have seen me do these webinars before, so won't take a long time with this, but I've been in the association space in and out for the past 10 years or so, 25 years in software products and solutions, and really passionate about helping association professionals make the most of their data, and that comes with strategies, with engagement, and all those sorts of things. So really excited to present for you today. And I'm joined by Heather McNair, so I'm gonna let Heather introduce herself.
Thanks so much, Bill. As he mentioned, I'm Heather McNair. And if I'm a familiar name or face to any of you, it's probably from my 8-ish years at Higher Logic. Although I've been in and around the association space for like 15 plus years now, doing everything from member recruitment to volunteer management to managing tech stacks. I've kind of been all over the board. But earlier this year, I and a few other Higher Logic alumni decided to start a new software company. We've been hearing from you guys and observing ourselves that there are a lot of gaps in the association tech stack. And so we decided to start this new company, Cloud Generation, to build these targeted, easy to use applications that plug into that current tech ecosystem to address those gaps, make your lives easier. So part of what I'm going to be talking about today is, are those applications, but really more importantly, the research that we've done, kind of the whole finding process that got us to where we are today. So we'll touch on that in a few minutes. I hate agenda slides. Anyone who's heard me speak knows this, but I feel like I have to be here. So just a really quick rundown on what we're going to talk about. We're already doing the intro. Bill is going to go through some engagement stats from what they've seen. What does an engaged member and engaged customer look like? And then we're going to talk about what personalization looks like and why that's important in this whole picture. And one of my kind of favorite topics is like creating these bespoke experiences and how that standard is being set across the industry. And then we're going to kind of look at what journeys look like, these member customer journeys, rewards, and then ways to measure your success. Let's see how you're doing.
Okay, so just really quickly by way of introduction of Association Analytics, I think many of you know us, but we are the creators of the SaaS analytics solution called Acumen, which is a product which brings data from all different sources So we integrate and aggregate that data. We have a lot of pre-built integrations and hundreds of pre-built visualizations that are built on best practices with analytics scenarios already built in. So the idea is we take that data from all those different sources, give you easy ways to create insights and ultimately to take action on that. And so, and the main way that one of the main ways that we do that is with engagement, right? Which is a good segue into today's talk. So let's take a look at that. So what do engaged customers do? So this, of course, varies, from one association to the next, but it's things like, they purchase things, right? They renew their membership, they click on your emails or subscribe to your newsletters, right? Ultimately, they might do things like participate in leadership, right? Committees, they volunteer, things like that. Maybe eventually they donate, but a big part of what they do is earn credits, right? So I mean, that's we found that learning is a big part of the engagement model, or the donut, so to speak, for lots of different associations. So let's take a look at what we call the engagement journey, right? And we sort of segment that. And these labels here, interested, active, and connected, they're arbitrary, but the idea is that your members or your customers, start off with small amounts of engagement, right? Where they want to get some information, right? They come to your website, maybe they attend an event or attend a course or something as a non-member. They might join, and then they would start to do things like join the community, and then they would start to take some courses or things like that, right? And so the idea with this is that there are certain behaviors along the journey that are inflection points, right? And what we mean by that is that's the behavior that starts to take me from someone that's merely interested to someone that's active, and then ultimately from someone that's active to what we call someone that's connected, right? These are your higher engaged not employees here, higher engaged members and customers, and those that do things like donate, they volunteer, and they spend more, and they're more loyal to the organization. Okay, so let's take a look at that as it relates to engagement behaviors, right? So if you remember from the first screen, we had this idea of a model point distribution, and when you look at those engagement scores bucketed out into 10 buckets or deciles, the first 3 buckets are the ones that are interested, right? And so in that case, we have a lot of people that are going to the website, and maybe some of them actually join as members, but they haven't really done a lot of the things that we want engaged members to do. And so you can see up in the top right, we have sorted that by engagement score. So it's the first buckets, right? 0 to 3. And then if we go to the next one, we look at that next tier, which are the active ones. So that's 4 through 7. And you can see that the behaviors are quite different, right? And noticeably, the credits earned, right? That's the top of the ribbon chart in the sort of teal color there. That's now sort of taken prominence, right? And what we know from looking at that is that's an inflection point. If that takes people from what we call interested to what we call active, and it has a lot to do with the courses or the continuing education that you're able to get them to participate in. And then taking that a step further, the last one is connected. So here we can see that credits are still quite important, but then at the bottom, there's a lot of new colors that we haven't seen before. Now we're focusing, or we're sorting by engagement score buckets 8 through 10. The courses are still very important, but now there's some additional behaviors, things like donations and leadership committee participation, for example. So those are things that represent a larger commitment, that are further down that commitment curve, but we may never have got there if we didn't emphasize some of the other behaviors previous to that, right? So that's the idea. It's a journey. It's not an exact journey with very specific steps for each individual, but there are some patterns that you can see, and those behaviors that represent inflection points are quite easy to spot, right, when you look at engagement picture this way. Okay, so last thing that we'll look at is what we call the engagement cycle. So in this is just sort of to illustrate the relationship between Acumen and products like cloud generation. So those are they're in the middle there, right? So we have cloud generation, we have some other sort of unnamed applications, And all of them are trying to drive certain behaviors, right? Whether it's learning or whether it's getting people to subscribe to a newsletter or click on an email or make a purchase. Those are all sort of conversions, right? All of these different tools and applications are trying to drive certain types of conversions, and they do that ideally with data that come from all of from your overall ecosystem, right? So Acumen is operating kind of on the outside with this cycle of collecting data, integrating data, and analyzing data, and that data is also used to sort of seed the processes that all those other applications are running. And then the outputs of that also further feeds into that cycle. So, so Acumen and tools like Cloud Generation are very complementary to each other in that sense. So with that, I'm going to kick things over to Heather and look forward to learning more about Cloud Generation.
Awesome, thank you, Bill. And I mentioned just a couple minutes ago kind of what the premise behind Cloud Generation, and the easy to use products. Kind of one of the things I want to point out on this slide is the delivering best practices, and it's one of the things that we really firmly believe in, that understanding best practices, making it as easy for you guys to be as successful as possible, is key. And so with that has come a lot of research, a lot of talking to people, a lot of understanding your workflows, how things are going, and it's been a fascinating process, and we've learned a lot along the way, and the first three applications that we're starting with are centered around certification, online learning, as Bill mentioned, and I like to start by talking about personalization, and that it kind of seems like, how does learning and personalization go together? But where these things really come into play is being able to talk to someone where they are and to move them along their journey. It's, as Bill was saying, that journey, moving them along, getting them from, point A, point B, point C. But that journey doesn't look the same for every single person. And in fact, I kind of joke, if those of you kind of maybe old enough to remember The Price is Right, they had a game called Plinko, and you had various starting points, and this puck would go down and move in various directions. And I think we have to expect that our member journeys are going to look like that. We can't expect it to be this nice, clean curve. And so with that, we really need to talk to each individual person. And so this personalization maturity model really kind of speaks to how we should be evolving and talking to people. And years ago, we were just doing mass mailings. Everyone got the same exact message, same time, and over the years we've progressed. And kind of the next one was these mail merge, putting in variables, first name, job title, that type of thing. Next up, demographic-based segmentation. So sending certain emails to people based on where they live, or what job they hold, what functional job title they may have. And then we're getting smarter and smarter and smarter along the way. Omni-channel communications, basically talking to people where they want to be talked to. So, do you want to get email? Do you want to get texts? Do you want to get in-app notifications? And, and understanding that about people. And then kind of getting to this predictive personalization, which we'll talk about in a second. And then the ultimate is the segment of one. And when I started kind of talking about this concept 3 or 4 years ago, most associations were kind of still down in this kind of lower left corner here. Mass mailings, mail merge, maybe kind of dabbling in the demographic-based segmentation. And kind of unfortunately, the research is showing that a lot of organizations are still there. And so one of the things that Bill and I were kind of curious about, and he asked me as we were prepping for this, is, is, where are people? So we'd love for you guys to jump in the chat and kind of tell us and tell each other, kind of where you are. Have you guys started in the whole, behavior purchase-based recommendations? Are you looking at what people have done in the past to make specific recommendations for them going forward, like maybe what courses you're offering them based on what they've gone to in the past, or maybe for your annual conference, are you calling out specific sessions at the conference based on things that they've done in the past? Or maybe you're even progressing further. Maybe you're using artificial intelligence for predictive personalization. So yeah, if you guys can jump in the chat and just kind of chime in on that. The most successful companies today are, and it's probably a no-brainer, are up on that upper right side. Hey, Andy. So, yep, demographic-based segmentation. Yeah, that's, and and the whole like behavior-based recommendations. There are some really easy ways to start getting out there. A really well-known example of this is Netflix. That's probably a very obvious one for most of us. And the interesting thing, so Netflix asks you when you join, when you sign up, like, what do you like? What kind of movies do you like? What kind of TV shows? The interesting thing is they found out that adding those demographics and psychographics to the recommendations they send to you actually makes no improvements over just the recommendations based on your behavior. So while I would love to tell the world that all I do is watch these smart documentaries like The Mind Explained, which I do watch and I love, it's also telling me that I might be interested in Britney Spears, so it probably knows me better than I know myself, or better than I'm willing to admit to myself. And for Netflix, more than 75% of the activity on their site is driven by this personalization engine. And not only are they doing this behavior-based modeling, they're also doing similarity-based modeling. So they're watching the history of other users with similar tastes to you, and they're recommending other things to you based on what those other people are watching. Spotify does this as well, like brilliantly. They look at, let's see, John and Jane both like the same song. And so they'll look at what else is on John's playlist and they'll recommend it to Jane, and they'll look at what else is on Jane's playlist and they'll recommend it to John. Very simplified example of it, but that's what they're doing, and they've been incredibly successful with it. And then next level stuff is the idea of these truly customized, personalized, bespoke products. I love, if you guys haven't done this, take a couple minutes to go onto Converse's website and play with this. You can go in and completely customize a pair of tennis shoes, from the laces to the grommets, eyelets, whatever you call them, to the color of the little thing that goes up the back of it. Every single piece you can customize it, and they will build it for you. We're also seeing this in jeans, which are like the bane of most women's existence, trying to find a pair of jeans that fit. There are apps now that will measure you, and they will custom make a pair of jeans for you. And I bring up these examples, and I'm sure a lot of you are like, yeah, there's no way we could, that's not relatable. There's no way we could ever do stuff like that. But it is actually very possible. And there are some amazing opportunities out there for you to start looking at your business differently and identify ways that you can be doing this. And I always mess up their name because they changed it, Association for Talent Development, I believe, ATD. They actually, when you join, they ask you to take a quiz. And then based on the results of that quiz, they make recommendations to you based on those results. So what courses you should be taking, what resources are available to you. That's a really simple example of exactly this kind of experience. And I think, yeah, how easy would that be if if you have a certification program, have someone take a quiz to just assess where they are, where their strengths are, and where they need to shore up their knowledge, and then give them a set of resources based on that. It's pretty simple stuff to do, and helps ensure the success of your certificates, of your candidates, whatever the proper name is. So we wanted to throw a quick poll out there to find out, what is your average course completion rate? So online courses, do you know how many people actually, out of the number of people who start a course, how many of them are actually finishing it, or what percentage of them?
All right, and let's take a look at the results.
Well, that's so 20% at 81 to 100%. That's impressive.
So just for the benefit of those that might watch it on recording later, so we have 0 to 20% at 10% of us there, another 10 up to 40%. So we have 20 in the middle, 41 to 60. The biggest bucket is 40% who don't know. That's kind of, I don't know, are you surprised by that, Heather? That's kind of, I was expecting that to be the biggest. I don't know about quite that big, but.
Yeah, no, I actually expected more of them to say they didn't know.
Okay, good.
Right. Yeah, and I would actually encourage people on this. Someone asked this question out on Collaborate, ASAE's community site, and no one has answered her. So I would love actually for you guys to go out and answer her, because I think this is a really interesting point of discussion, because it obviously is a challenge that needs to be addressed. So overall, and this is more than just associations, but different studies have been done that show that the average completion rate for online courses is actually between 10 and 15%. So most of you are doing far better than that, which is not really surprising in the association space. But there obviously is still room for improvement. And, one of the things, online learning, obviously, we saw a huge boom, so many things moving to online learning in 2020 with the pandemic, everyone working from home. But kind of with that came this whole, distractions, working from home. You've got the kids, you've got the dog, you've got, the refrigerator that you keep going and getting snacks from, just Zoom fatigue in general. And so, it really now has become incumbent upon us to figure out the techniques to keep people engaged, and, to keep that percentage up there at 80, 90%. We'd love to have it at 100%. We're going to look at some examples, and they're going to specifically be around certification programs. A lot of associations have certification programs, and in my experience, they are a fantastic way of keeping people engaged with your association. In my personal background, one of the associations that I used to work for, the non-certified members had like an 86% renewal rate or something like that. And when they were certified, they jumped up to 93%. So huge difference there. And so that's where I see major potential around certification programs. In our studies around this, we really have kind of broken out certification programs into 3 phases. One of them is identifying your candidates. Get the right people into the funnel to be participating in this process to begin with. A huge part of it is keeping them motivated. Once they get in there, how do you ensure that they continue on through the process and finish what they started? And then the recertification, getting them to renew that certification every 2 years, every 3 years, whatever it may be. In the conversations that I've had with a lot of you, it seems like most associations struggle with at least one part of this, and maybe sometimes a couple of them. And they're the great thing right now. Certification programs have kind of always been this what the best expression is, but this kind of like this thing you can't touch. And with the pandemic, it has given us opportunities that we didn't have before to reevaluate stuff, to shake things up, to try new things. And one example is in the past, the idea of delivering online exams for certifications was just verboten, like it was not going to happen, but everyone had to do it, or had to do in person. And with the pandemic, we had to move to online. And the Institute of Certification Excellence actually did a study, and they found out that most people that started offering online testing are sticking with it. It was actually very successful, and they're continuing with it, even though they can offer in-person testing again. So one great example of being able to look at things differently. There are a lot of different data sources that you have. And one thing that I found, kind of one of the failure points, is only seeing or only making decisions based on one or two of those data sources. And when we're talking about personalization, you can't effectively personalize communications and create those bespoke experiences if you're only seeing part of the picture. An example is sending out like a "we miss you" email to a member, because maybe they haven't registered for any events, but you're not looking at community data, and so you're not seeing that they're actually very active in the community. They get that "we miss you" email, and they have the the moment of "don't you know who I am?" And you want to avoid that. And there are now some really great tools. Acumen is one of them, and that's one of the reasons we're really excited to be partnering with them. That you can have a tool like Acumen where you can bring together all of these different data sources into one place and have that single point of integration. We're doing the same thing on the cloud generation side. And then the great thing is that we're also passing data back and forth between our two tools. And so you have the analysis piece on their side, and you have the action piece on our side, and coming in from all of those different data sources to really enhance your dashboards, identify those inflection points that Bill was talking about, kind of make that member journey better, identify patterns that indicate the strengths and weaknesses in your education program.
Yep, just a quick comment on that. I mean, so looking back at the stages of certification, that identify candidates part. So I think that's a big part of what you get with an aggregate tool like Acumen, is you get the ability to choose candidates not only for learning opportunities, but for really anything, right? And purchases or events or anything like that, based on data that you're collecting from all of the platforms, right? And so I think that the two-way communication with Acumen and cloud generation is really important for that. But then also thinking about that outer part of the continuum that we looked at earlier, you have the ability to then do analysis on the output of all of those things, right? So it's not only helping you convert, within the center of that circle, but then getting a more holistic view of the engagement of your members generally, right? And the education piece being a key part of that. Okay, sorry about that.
No, not at all. No, I appreciate that. And here is an example of kind of taking it from 10,000 feet down to something a little more tangible. Kind of bringing the data together, you can put together a comprehensive journey, excuse me, of exactly what Bill was just talking about. Like, okay, who are your prospects? Who are the right people? Who's eligible to pursue the credential? So just black and white, what are your requirements for going into that certification program? And then who are the best qualified? So, you can look at the data from the past and figure out, okay, who has gone through this program, who successfully completed the program. And you can then model your ideal candidate after that and really target those people with your communications. And then, once someone has indicated an interest, once they've enrolled in the program, how do we identify those people? And then the next step, approving them, kind of keeping, and then pursuing, keeping them engaged in the process, not letting them drop off. And then finally, awarding them, giving them that recognition. And this kind of may look overwhelming, but it really is. It's data-based and it's rules-based. It's the, have they done this? Yes. Have they done that? No. And so when we're talking about behavior-based modeling, if you kind of break it down in very simple steps like this, or very simple thought processes, it makes it a lot easier to say, okay, yeah, we can do this. It's absolutely possible. And I would encourage you guys to take the time to actually map out your journey for a certification program, for whatever your learning program, whatever it may be like this. And if you can watch the data along the way, you are more likely to recognize where learners are disengaging and help identify your obstacles. And Bill, I know you mentioned you guys have dashboards that can help people identify, like, what courses may not be as successful as others, or are more successful than others.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things you can do here, but one of the things that we do is we track sentiment for courses. So there's, do you complete the course, obviously, or the track of courses is one thing. We track things like pass fail, but then we look at, in addition to enrollment trends and things, we look at sentiment. So then we can start to answer, the question of, if they're not completing it, is there a reason for it? Maybe it doesn't meet the needs, or they just don't like it, it's too long, or whatever. We can try to get at some of that so we can adjust. So that's actually a really good segue to a question I was going to ask you. And if you're listening, this is putting Heather on the spot. It's the first time I've asked this question because it just popped into my head, which is, do you think that, it seems to me that if you start to lose people along the way, like we get people to sign up for the for the certification or for this track of courses, but they don't complete, and it's probably one of two reasons: either we didn't get the right people in the first place, or our tactics, right? There are methods for keeping them motivated and keeping them on the path were insufficient. So which one do you think is the bigger, if I'm suffering from a low completion rate, what do you think is most likely to be my problem?
Within, well, I was going to say within an association, but it's probably true anywhere. I think it is really a lack of keeping people engaged throughout the process. And, and part of that, I would actually even split that into two things. And one of them is just human behavior. We are who we are, and life gets in the way. I don't know how many times I've signed up for courses, more of like the fun type things, and said, I'm going to do this. And then, I get busy with work, I get busy with life, and I never finish it. So there's the human behavior part of it. And, and then the other side is, have we created unnecessary obstacles within our program? And that's, that's where you really need, well, both places, you really need to be watching the data. And there are things, we're working on building the tools for both. With Acumen, they're making it easier to identify, maybe the places where you may be creating obstacles, the courses where people may be stalling out, those issues. And frankly, those are pretty easy to address, to say, hey, you know what, step 4 of our certification process is where we seem to be losing X%. Let's look at, maybe we're asking for 3 reference letters and people are just having a hard time getting those to us. Do we really need to have 3 of those? I'm just using that as a simple example, but those are the kind of things you really should be looking at about, where you created those obstacles. Kind of related to that, ASAE with their CAE program. Years ago, they used to require 7 years of, I think 7 consecutive years of experience in the industry before you could sit for the exam, the CAE exam. And they realized that was excluding people who were staying home for a couple of years to raise a child, or who were serving in the military. And they were like, does it really need to be consecutive? Can we just count, overall experience? And by realizing that they had created that obstacle and removing it, they brought in a whole new pool of people. So you've got that side of it, and then you've got the behavior side, and that's really where communications come in. You've got to constantly communicate with people and prod them along. Your process, what it takes to get certified, to take the course, whatever it may be. Your members don't. So you can't assume like one email is going to be enough. And so many times that's what we're doing. We say, oh yeah, here are your steps, go forth. And yeah, it's not enough.
Good, thanks.
Yep, that was a very long-winded answer, sorry. And then, like, the pinnacle of the journey, we've prodded people along, we fixed our problems, and we get them certified. And this is the fun part, the recognition piece of it. And one of the things that I love about recognition, and I don't think we make a big enough deal out of it, is recognition is a two-way street. Not only do our members, our certificates, love that recognition piece, and they may say they don't, but they do. The more you have these badges and whatever else it may be out there in the field, the more awareness it creates for your certification program. So you're serving both sides with that. And so one of the things in that communication process is to notify someone after they've earned their certification. Hey, here's your electronic badge. Here's, you should post it in all of these places. Here are instructions on how to do it. Make it as easy as possible for them and to put it out there. We've actually integrated with a tool called Badger. And the great thing about Badger is that it allows you to pull in data to say, so people can basically click on the badge and say, yes, Bill really does have this certification. It's valid. And you can include information about that certification. So if someone isn't familiar with it, they can read about it. They can click on a link to find out even more. So it really helps raise awareness about your certification program. So people can identify the veracity of the badge and say, yes, he really does have it. And what the heck is this whole thing all about? And Greg Melia formerly with ASAE, when he was kind of revamping the CAE program, he loved to say, be reasonably unreasonable about the inclusion of the credential everywhere. And he loves to tell the story about how he wanted the CAE credential absolutely everywhere possible. And once his kids were old enough to learn his name, they started introducing him as Greg Melia, CAE. So even his children had that, were introducing him that way. So kind of think about things in those terms, like get that name, get that certification credential out there everywhere, every way possible. All right, so we have talked about metrics a little bit along the way. One of the kind of critical things is we've got to prove that, hey, what we're doing is working, or figure out where those issues may be. And some of the kind of traditional metrics that we look at are open rates, click-through rates on our emails, conversion rates. Did people buy the product? Did they register for the event? The registration trends, completion rates by the program, by the stage, like we've talked about, pass-fail rates of courses. But where I'm seeing like some really exciting trends and potential is more around the experience and engagement metrics. And so looking at renewal rates, I mentioned with my old former association, they are old too, but former association, it being certified had a huge impact on renewal rates. So from an overall like lifetime value of members, that was huge. That justified the certification program right there. Satisfaction scores. Typically, people who are certified within your organization are more loyal. They're more satisfied, they're more engaged within your organization. And they will also, referrals are huge. They will also bring more people into your organization because they're more excited about it. Bill mentioned the course review sentiment. When he said that's one of the things they do, I was like, oh my God, that's gold to have that information. Then also those inflection points along the member journey.
So if I could just make a quick comment on these, Heather. So by and large, if you look on the left side, the traditional metrics are things that you can already get from your source systems. Like if you have an LMS or if you have an AMS, and of course you do, but those are things that you can, that they kind of come standard. And most of the things on the right are things that you're really going to be better off with an external tool where you're aggregating data from multiple systems, right? So renewal rates, yes, you can calculate that from your AMS, but what you really want is you want to understand how things that are done within your LMS or within your community, within your other tools, how those affect renewal rates, right? Because we want to take action, we want to drive higher renewal. Same way with satisfaction. Yes, we can measure satisfaction, but how do we improve it? We need to understand what are the drivers for higher or lower satisfaction. And again, we get that with that integrated view of data. So again, the idea is all of the tools like cloud generation are driving conversions using data to sort of fill that funnel with the right candidates in the first place, and then the output helps us build that overall better member experience, right? So, and that's more like the customer and member experience engagement metrics that we see on the right.
Yep. All right.
We made it.
We made it. Yeah. So before we wrap it up, do we want to open it to questions?
Yeah, we should. I should have been clear about that. The questions were welcome all along, of course, but yeah, definitely. If anyone has a question to put in the Q&A or in the chat, now would be a great time to do that. Yeah, and so if you don't want to put it in the chat, you obviously can send those offline to Heather or to myself, Bill.
Everyone's being shy. So yes, please feel free to reach out to either one of us.
Okay. Anything else? Anything else you want to say by way of wrap up before we sign off, then, Heather?
No, just thank you guys so much for joining us this afternoon, and appreciate your time and look forward to chatting more.
Yes, likewise. So thanks again for joining today. This is our last webinar for this year, but we have a whole lineup of new things planned in our thought leadership, as well as our how-to webinar series for next year. If you have anything in mind for the wall that you might know about from our other series, send that stuff to Greg Pollack. Looking forward to to more cool stuff there. So thank you very much, and see you all again soon. Have a great day.